Welcome to the HR Think Tank, a podcast that uncovers the power a trusted workforce has on team performance, culture, and morale. We gather insights from experts, business leaders, and HR professionals to help you lead your team. Here's your host, Kai No, CEO and co-founder of Verify Now.
Hiring new talent is challenging in the best of times. There's plenty of research that shows the hiring process is biased and unfair. During every step of the process, you're asking yourself if you've selected the best candidate for the role. So how can you assess this, and what are the best predictors of on-the-job success? In this episode, we discuss the role of skills assessment in the hiring process and explore the opportunities when companies hire based on merit, not on background. From the Defence Force to producing a Hollywood blockbuster to co-founding an internationally successful AI platform, our guest is proof that your resume doesn't necessarily showcase your skills and capabilities. Today, we have Omer Molad, who is the co-founder and CEO of Vervoe. He's on a mission to make hiring about merit, not background. Vervoe replaces the traditional hiring process with skills assessment and gives every candidate an opportunity to showcase their talent by doing job-related tasks. Since launching in 2016, Vervoe has gone from strength to strength, testing candidates on their skills in order to help remove unconscious biases from the hiring process. Welcome to the show, Omer.
Hey Kai, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to start off with defining what a skill is and how this differs to traits and attributes.
Okay, so the way that we think about skills is something that you can learn, which is different from your personality, which is typically fixed and stays with you for your whole life. Personalities can vary slightly, but people don't normally change their personalities drastically. Whereas skills like welding metal or designing a logo or selling software or being good at pottery or flying an aircraft, they're things that we can learn over a period of time. And that's how we think about a skill. And then there's a further kind of drilling down. We think of skills in two dimensions: job-specific skills, which people often refer to as hard skills, so doing something that's specific to one job, or general work skills, skills that are applicable to most or many jobs, often referred to as soft skills, like attention to detail or openness to feedback or working in a team.
Look, Vervoe is an innovator in the space. If you don't mind just sharing some of the different types of skills assessment available, not only on the Vervoe platform, but also in the market. If you don't mind just going through that with us.
What we've done is we've essentially taken the movie industry has been doing auditions, and a few other industries in technical roles in engineering. It's common to ask job candidates to do a code test, and sometimes in hospitality, come do a shift in the kitchen. We've essentially taken that concept, brought it online, made it digital, made it asynchronous, and made it possible and available for every job. So from the supermarket checkout cashier to the data scientist, to the salesperson, to the marketing or growth person, to security officers, to literally every role you can imagine, it's possible to test for. And there are obviously exceptions where there's more limited applications. So cardiothoracic surgery, is probably less relevant to online simulation. But for the vast majority of roles, you can put candidates in job-related scenarios online in a way that gives you very valuable insight.
Now, in terms of where skills assessment fit in the recruitment cycle, if you could just share a little bit of insight into where it's commonly used. I mean, I will say that Verify Now, we have been using Vervoe for the last 18 months, and we use it earlier in the recruitment cycle. But I just want to hear from you where the majority of Vervoe clients, use the platform.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag. It depends on typically three things: the job, the company, and market conditions. So, for example, if you have a role like call center role where you have a lot of applicants and you're a company that has a brand that can attract many candidates, then the main problem you're trying to solve is filtering. You're trying to get from 1,000 applicants to 10. And so in that scenario, you want to use skills assessments at the top of the funnel. Certainly through Vervoe, where we automate the grading and the ranking of candidates. For if it's not automated, then that's a different problem. Now, there are other roles, typically more highly skilled roles. So let's take a polar opposite. Let's take a data scientist, where there are probably more vacancies than candidates. And if you're going to hire a data scientist or an astrophysicist, you're probably going to have to attract passive candidates. People aren't going to sort of be fighting amongst themselves to apply for your job. And so in that scenario, you might use a skills assessment further down the funnel after you've courted people and convinced them that they want to work for your company. Then now you still want to do it because you still want to make sure you don't want to compromise your standards. You want to make sure that they can do the job. And the other day I heard about someone, a very senior person at a big company who's considered a star by the CEO, but was put in a role that didn't suit that individual. That wasn't an example of really good performance. And that reminded me of, there's no such thing as a star. There's someone who can be a really good performer in a certain environment. Okay, so it's all guesswork. So unless you've worked with someone for a long period of time, you don't know for sure. And even then, they might be great at role A, but not great at role B. So the whole game of recruitment is, how do you minimize the guesswork? Let's be honest about what it is. And so the more you see people doing job-specific tasks, the more you give them a chance to do a slice of the job, the less you're relying on guessing and the more confidence you have. And that's true whether you have 1,000 applicants or one, but you do need to adapt your workflow and your recruitment process to the market conditions and to the situation that you're facing, depending on how many candidates you have and the problem you're trying to solve.
For users of Vervoe, are there anything that they can do to assist perhaps people with language difficulties or people with learning difficulties? Because sometimes skills assessment has their own sort of pressure points. Is there anything that users of Vervoe can do to adjust skills assessment to help these individuals out?
Yeah, so when people have, whether it's language barriers, a variety of disabilities, whether it's learning, physical disabilities, vision impaired, there are workarounds to support that. But what I'd say generally is that there can be a tendency on the employer side to put people under unrealistic pressure, and we try to discourage that. And I'll give an example. So having video questions with 2-minute time limits, one after the other, 10 in a row. I mean, that's going to freak anybody out. That's intimidating. And in what work setting are you going to have to perform your task in 2 minutes with someone sitting above, over your shoulder?
With a big timer right there, counting down as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, as an Olympian, we're in the Olympics now, and if you're sort of doing the 100 meters freestyle, but you train for that. You train for that repeatedly and not for most jobs. And so I think, yes, there are cases where you want to use video. And yes, there are cases when you want a time limit, but not for every question, not for every task. And people sort of get carried away with technology. And then they say, oh, candidates aren't doing this, or candidates didn't do well. Well, because you scared them. And so again, I come back to realistic. If you want to know if someone can weld metal, watch them weld metal. You don't have to watch them welding metal with a gun to their head. That's not the scenario that they're going to face on the job. It's more about trying to realistically, sometimes giving, I went to law school, and in law school exams are open book, and people think that that's easier. Actually, it's much harder because you can't memorize anything. There's no point. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's all about analysis and adapting the materials to the scenario you're going to get. So I think that that's a good analogy. Sometimes giving people more time is actually more challenging. And so it's really got to be appropriate to the job. And what you want to do is set people up to succeed, not to fail, and let the sort of top people, rise to the top and shine.
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point. I think if it mimics the task that you're going to do on the job, and that's why I really resonate with the Vervoe mission statement, which is hiring around merit, not on background. As I said, we've been users of Vervoe for the last 18 months. And we've used it for various roles, finance, admin, operations, even developer roles. And what that has done for us is given us a different level of confidence that we didn't have in the past, particularly for roles that maybe myself as a hiring manager, I'm not as familiar with. It's enabled me to be more confident with my assessment criteria. And then also I can pass that around and get feedback, with my colleagues or external advisors as well around the suitability of a particular candidate, rather than just, leaning on my gut feel, this person feels right because they've said the right thing or they've worn the right thing, they've created the right impression. I'm very conscious about that. I'm not hiring just on you looking good on paper. I want to make sure that you're a good fit for the team and you can absolutely do the job.
You said the magic word confidence. And that's why, regardless of where you use skills assessments in the funnel, it's all about confidence.
Yep.
It's just, where is it most effective to deploy it? But at the end of the day, if all you wanted to do was achieve efficiency, there are other ways to do it. They're just not going to be effective.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you confidence. They're not going to predict performance.
Yeah.
But you could do resume passing. That's very quick, but you're not going to end up with the best person because you're still relying on the information that's in someone's resume, which we know doesn't predict performance. So the key is confidence. That is the key, because as we said, at the end of the day, all hiring is some degree of guesswork.
Yeah.
Until you've worked with someone for a long period of time, you're guessing. So how do you reduce the information asymmetry? How do you get as confident as you can? There are no guarantees in life. Even with someone who's a superstar, they might lose confidence.
Yeah.
They might be in a poor environment. They might have issues at home. Things change. It's human beings. It's fluid. So you want to get as much confidence as you can.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
And this is the advice that we give to the clients that we provide recruitment services for as well is, please, we've done our work. We've done the initial phone screening. We've done the skills assessment to help shortlist. Don't judge the shortlist purely based on their CV, because the CV does not tell the whole story. It tells a small part of the story, but until you've had the interview, until you've had multiple conversations, actually seen them in their work, it's hard to assess. So it's the advice that we constantly give to our clients. And some of the clients who are maybe less mature in their recruitment process, they put a lot of weight on the CV aspect, on whether or not this person has been with brand or household organizations. Oh, wow, they've been with Google. They must be an amazing person, because if Google didn't wanted them, surely we would want them. And so we always give clients just be cautious about leaning on those brand names. That's something we're very conscious of. Vervoe's got a large client base abroad, but your two largest markets are Australia and America. Is that right?
The Americas generally, and here in APAC together, that's probably 3/4, and then about a quarter sort of other, which includes Europe and parts of Asia. Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear some of the different ways Vervoe clients have used skills assessment, and if you could talk about some of the most effective ways that they've been deployed into an organization. Love to hear about that.
Let's sort of start big picture. So we think of the market in segments, so probably different segments to most people. So unskilled labor, semi-skilled labor, skilled, and then scarce, and then executive. Okay, so they're the 5 kind of segments. So the unskilled labor is a role where basically you need to turn up, or you might need a driver's license, but you don't need an education, you don't need a high degree of sort of hardly any skills. Semi-skilled is things like high volume call center, retail, those kind of roles. Skilled is typically people that have a high degree of skill, typically a high degree of education. They work in an office or they work in healthcare. And then you've got sort of really the hard to fill roles, and then executive is, the CEO of Qantas, whatever. So semi-skilled and skilled is where most of our focus is, and that's 2/3 of the economy. Okay, it's 2/3. And in the US, that's about 100 million jobs.
Wow.
And in those two segments. And so we focus on those two areas. Now, in the semi-skilled area, so we do things like we work with Walmart on multiple levels of roles, from the sort of supermarket cashier to store managers, regional managers. Another example is with Australia Post, so pretty much anyone who delivers your mail, anyone who packages up, who puts together your packages that get delivered at Christmas time, all those sort of people. And so those are kind of like sort of the high volume semi-skilled settings where you're literally testing thousands and thousands of people a day. in a way that is fairly short. It's done typically on a mobile phone. It's fairly basic. It is job specific, but it also might test things like, punctuality or how will you greet someone or things like that. And so then moving into the skilled area, the top 3 roles that we test for are, or top 3 role groups, I should say, are tech, sales, and customer service. And so there it looks like the 2 biggest industries are software companies and digital and ad agencies. So like WPP and Omnicom Group, those sort of big ad agencies, and tech companies of every variety. Again, modern sort of new economy type companies who hire knowledge workers, people that typically work in an office or work from home, but they're not sort of driving a crane or, those sort of workers. And so there, it's much more about confidence and less about efficiency. It's less about filtering 10,000 people a day and more about deep testing, rigorous kind of scenario-based testing, design this onboarding flow, rewrite this sales deck, deal with this customer scenario, whatever, those kind of things. And so there it'll be sort of, as we mentioned earlier, middle of funnel type testing. You might have 20, 30 applicants, you might have less. And you're really trying to get that signal of, well, who's going to stand out? And often it's going to be the person you least expected, not the one who, as you mentioned, you were talking about Verify Now, not the person who worked at Google or whatever, but the person who's maybe taken the harder road, or just it might have nothing to do at all with where they've worked or what they've done previously. And sometimes it has to do with how much they want the job and how creative they are and how hard they work and those kind of things. Those people shine, and it does give a strong signal. So they're the sort of, in really broad strokes, the main 2 applications, a sort of efficiency, I should say, for those really high volume semi-skilled roles, and then confidence for those more highly skilled knowledge worker type roles.
If you don't mind, I'd love to go back in time and just uncover, how Vervoe started, why Vervoe started, actually. I've read it on the website, I've read countless things around this, but I'd love to hear it directly from you, why Vervoe was created, what's the vision for the organization?
Yeah, so David and I started the company together. We've been friends for 20 years. We've had very different experiences, but it's kind of like everything we've done in life has led up to this point. That's how it feels. We both saw from both sides, the candidate and the hiring side, these sort of this dislocation where the top performers in big teams that we had were not the people you'd pick out of the resume lineup. They were often the self-taught, hungrier kind of people that didn't work at the logo company. And we felt that. At the same time, David read about Automatic, the company that invented WordPress that was doing auditions, but physical auditions, like bringing people in for a week, like a job trial, which we thought, wow, that's such a great way to do it. It's only missing one thing. It's not efficient. You can't really scale that. It's not efficient. But that's like exactly how it comes back to what I was saying earlier around, reducing the guesswork, reducing the asymmetry, working with someone. And then we got involved in a film. We invested in a movie, and that was that's a story for another day, but a crazy experience. And, the movie industry, like, they don't really care what you've done before. There might be some exceptions if you're Tom Cruise, but other than that, it's basically like audition for the part. And like I mentioned about this sort of star employee that was in the wrong role, you're not going to cast Meryl Streep for like Reservoir Dogs or, Top Gun. Like that's just not, and Meryl Streep's probably arguably like the greatest or one of the greatest actors of all time, but just not in every film. There's got to be a better way to set people up for success, to get them doing the best work of their lives, the job that they were sort of born for. And so we said, okay, can we take this concept of an audition and make it online and for every job? And that's really, like, in a nutshell, that's it. Nothing's changed other than, okay, we built fancy technology and built a big team and we sell it and, people are using it all over the world. But when people say, oh, what is this? We say, it's what the movie business does, but for every job and efficiently online. That's it. And so that's never changed. And that's the story. And, it's kind of like, I've said this often, everything I've done in my life up until this point feels like an apprenticeship for this. And so that's where we are today.
So just shifting gears, and I want to talk about the broader employment sector. What hiring trends have you noticed over the last 18 months?
Oh, it's been extraordinary. What a roller coaster. So a year ago, even sort of middle to late 2020, there were no jobs and a million candidates. That's how it felt. Yeah. Like, the sort of volume of candidates had increased 3x, sometimes 5x for every role. Up to a third of recruiters were unemployed, usually on the agency side. And people were, there were all these kind of like initiatives to get people jobs. Yeah. Now there are no candidates and there are more vacancies than humans on the planet. It's crazy. And the truth's always in the middle, right? Yeah. So it's sort of a lot of froth in these stories. But absolutely, it was a very different market. And what's happened is the pandemic started, companies fired people, a lot of people, and in some cases, tens of thousands of people. And then what they're trying to do now is hire them back and another 5 or 10% on top of that. Yeah. Then there's government stimulus that in some countries has made it more attractive for people to not work. And then there's the sort of remote thing where people have said, well, I can work from home, so I'll live in a different city. Yeah. Or I don't want to do this minimum wage job anymore. I'll just be a creator on Patreon or whatever and earn a living that way, which is more than minimum wage. And so people have kind of figured out that there are alternatives. So there's a whole host of market forces coming to play together. And so now, if you want to hire a recruiter, basically you have no hope because it's the most in-demand role on the planet, whereas previously they were unemployed. Yeah. And so we're in this crazy, crazy kind of cycle where now it's a candidate's market and people are writing articles every day about the skills shortage and all these kind of things. Yep. And a lot of it's true, but not all of it. There's a skills shortage, yes, but a lot of companies want to pay minimum wage and then complain that they can't attract anyone. Well, if you paid a few dollars more, maybe you will be able to get people to work for you. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And at the end of the day, if you're a good company and you have an attractive proposition, you will find people. And on top of that, you might need to take a long-term view and develop people. And you might need to say, okay, we want to hire engineers or we want to hire sales reps and, it's just there's a shortage and we're competing. So why don't we take people and build a boot camp and develop people over time and do that? But they're the kind of things that, the innovative companies will always overcome. They will always do well in any market. Okay. But there is absolutely at the moment a dynamic where there's this sort of sense that, well, there are no applicants and you have to sort of throw, gold at them. And look, to some extent, yes. But like I said before, if you're compromising your standards, if you're saying I'll hire anyone with a heartbeat, that's going to come back to bite you. We're seeing companies do that. That will come back to bite you because you will end up with people who are not going to perform or not be engaged or who will leave. And so I would encourage companies to absolutely get aggressive in attracting candidates, but also think about developing people and also think about make sure, no matter how aggressive you are in attraction, that you're not compromising your standards. It will hurt you later on.
Right. I just want to touch on your leadership approach, your leadership style. This is from a 2018 blog that you had written around leadership, health and company. But I'd love to get, a little bit more context in this. So I'm going to read it to you. So years ago, I used to judge my leadership by a single standard, how the team performed in my absence. What people do when a leader isn't looking is telling. Are people focused on being noticed or are they driven by a great sense of purpose? If they only want to impress or even worse, they are driven by fear, then they will only do the minimum. But if they believe in the mission and feel empowered, then they will do their best, even when they are not being observed. Talk to me about your leadership approach and how that has evolved from the start, so when you first launched Vervoe, to where we are at now.
One of the big things I've focused on is my communication and how do I come across to people, and when. Maybe the best way to describe it is like choosing which shots to play. So previously, I think I would swing at a lot of balls, and now I swing at less balls. So there are things that I leave I leave for others. And I'll give an example. I'll give a couple of examples. So there might be things I decide I'm just not going to get involved in at all. Previously, I'd feel, well, I have to do it or it'll never happen. Now what happens is I let it go and someone else, it gives space for someone else. And it turns out they all want to do it. So that's great. And then the second thing is people come to me, several times a day with problems. And previously my tendency would be like to solve it. But what I've learned is they don't always want me to solve it. They just want me to listen, or they might want advice. So now I ask them, do you just want to vent, or do you want my advice, or do you want me to get involved? Whereas previously there would only be one option. I would just get involved and do it. And I think just those two things are kind of made a big difference. It gives people space. And so I can be more of that kind of custodian and guide rather than, I'm still very hands-on in a lot of things, but it gives space for others to develop their own, both leadership and kind of to grow in their domain areas. That the article, the quote that you read, there's a term we use, impression management. There are people who are focused on observed performance and being seen, and there are people who focus on actual performance. And what you want to do is you want to reward actual performance, not observed performance. Not people who do things to be seen, but people who do things quietly and get the results. If you want something enduring, what you need to do is set the standards and the expectations, and then have people there for the right reasons and trust that it will happen. And that's not to say get out of people's way, let go of everything. No, but be there in the right way at the right times, but also know that you've instilled the right values and the right standards so that you can go on vacation, or if you get hit by a bus, people will know what's expected. Most leaders don't want to do that because they want to be indispensable. But actually, if you instill that, you are indispensable because you've instilled a spirit, a philosophy in the company. That in itself is a big achievement. And so I think that's what I was referring to in that quote.
I just want to ask one final question, which is around the future of skills assessment and the future of Vervoe. Where to next?
Yeah, so the future is data, and specifically around skills taxonomy that we're building. So we just launched what we call Closing the Loop, which now gives you the ability to tell us who you've hired. So you can click, I've hired this person, and you tell us when, and you tell us who the hiring manager was, and then we send you a survey 120 days later, and not to you, to the hiring manager. And we ask 3 questions. We ask, would you hire this person again? We get you to rate them out of 10, and then we give you an opportunity to make comments. Now, what that does is 2 things. First of all, it builds proof around quality of hire. So hiring the right people, or if not, then why, and understanding that, there are top performers that, if we're getting that signal of, okay, these people are rated really highly and we'd hire them again. So it's working. But the second thing it does is it helps us build this feedback loop. This is why we call it Closing the Loop. If, for example, you hired 10 people into, let's say, back-end, engineering roles, and 7 of them are really, really good performers, we will then look at what do they have in common in terms of how they performed the assessment. And it turns out that of those 7, 6 of them did really well in question 4 and question 8. And those questions are specifically around, openness to feedback, for example. And so now we know that for back-end engineering roles, either generally or in this context, openness to feedback is important. And then we ask, okay, is openness to feedback important for all engineering roles, or just back-end, or back-end at startups, or all engineering roles at startups? We've got all this data. And so then we can say, well, let's make assessments for engineering roles more, let's attribute more value to openness to feedback in the assessment itself and in the grading model. So that's why it's called machine learning. It learns. And so that is sort of the future, the taxonomy to be able to say, listen, this is how you reduce the guesswork. Mm-hmm. This is how you say with confidence, okay, for this role, these are the skills that are really important, not because we think, but because we know.
Yeah.
And the people who have these skills and can perform these tasks in this context, there's a really, really high chance they're going to do well in your role, in your company. And that's the future. All the rest is just features. But that is the future to unlocking, to sort of smashing this sort of, bad hires, and hiring is guessing and it's a crapshoot. Like, this is how you get confidence. And that's a lot of our energy and intellectual horsepower is going into that data loop.
Omer, thank you so much. We are now going to move on to the Fast 5 questions. This is an opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit better. Are you all good to go?
I'm good to go.
Okay. What was your first job?
In grade 7, I worked at an amusement park in Israel for 5 shekels an hour, which is just like, I don't know, it's like $1 an hour. You couldn't make this stuff up. And it was absolutely horrible. We just got abused all the time by parents who wanted their kids to win the teddy bear. But that was the first rocky start. That was my first job.
What's something interesting that's not on your CV?
I don't have a CV, but if I did, what wouldn't be on it is that, we invested in a film, and that's definitely an interesting experience. And I went to LA to sit on the set for a week and learn so much. And that's an awesome, I probably learned more from that than I did at a bunch of jobs or degrees. But that's not really something you put on a CV.
Well, look, if you ever do that again, let me know. That is one of those dreams of mine. I just love to be behind the scenes of how movies work. Like, every time I watch a movie, I'm like, how does that work? How did they get to that point of creating it together? I've always been fascinated by that. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Probably to worry less about how to get a job and how to have a good resume, and focus more on how to create my own job, and focus on the things that I genuinely love doing, not what I think I need to do to be employable.
What book is a must read, or what movie is a must watch?
Oh, the book list is so long. I mean, if you're in my position, you're trying to build a company, read The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. But I also think there's a book called Atomic Habits, which really anyone who wants to either develop or shed habits would benefit from. In terms of movies, I'll go with Silver Linings Playbook. I think that's a movie that it's hard not to be moved by if you're a human being, whether you like the actors or not. There's something about it.
What's a job for the future that doesn't exist today?
As we productize and automate a lot of things, as sort of robots start serving us French fries and all this kind of stuff, I think there will be jobs for thinking and for being creative. Like, literally, that will be the job. The closest thing we have today is like McKinsey, management consultant, but that's not what I mean. I think companies will want people that are like the opposite of the AI, the opposite of the robot, something that feels, people that really have that kind of that intuition. And I know there's AI that writes copy and AI that makes art, but that's exactly the point. It's the randomness, the sort of unpredictability about humans. And I think eventually we're going to have people whose job it is to sort of be the custodians of the humanity of those sort of traits. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I really hope that we have people dedicated to that.
Omer, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been wonderful to chat to you today.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
Our guest today was Omer Molad, co-founder and CEO of Vervoe, who has since become a sought-after thought leader in the skills-based hiring movement. Vervoe has grown to be a global leader in the HR tech space, impacting the way thousands of companies more efficiently hire the best candidate with confidence. You can learn more about Vervoe by visiting the website, and you can connect with Omer on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to share it with your network. We really appreciate your support.
Thanks for listening to the HR Think Tank with Kai No. We'd love it if you could subscribe and share our podcast with your network. As always, the resources and links mentioned will be included in the show notes and posted on the Verify Now website, verifynow.com.au.